Welcome to the conclusion of Hannahween month and happy Halloween. And since it's Halloween, I'd like to conclude this month with a review of, well, quite possibly my favorite horror movie of all time. Well, actually, it's not quite possibly because you already saw my top 10 favorite movies list. It's The Shining. The Shining is the best example of what you could do with horror. I don't find it particularly scary, but its imagery, its direction, its writing, its acting, it's perfect. Everything about The Shining just works. Every single time I watch it, I get something new out of it. Every time I watch it, I notice new little details. Every time I watch it, I just love more of what I loved before. This is a movie that gets better every single time I watch it. I love The Shining. Now, what's The Shining about? Well, The Shining is about Jack Torrance, played by Jack Nicholson, and his family who move up to this ski resort for the winter. And this ski resort is called the Overlook Hotel. And once Jack Nicholson and his family go into this hotel and, stay there for the winter, the entire family starts to notice weird things happening in this hotel. And even worse, they find out more about themselves than they wish they did. Now, people have been kind of mixed on this movie before, because this was not accurate to the book at all. And I've met a lot of people today who criticize this movie saying, the book was way better. The book, it's just better. It's better. Okay, for one, most people who say that the book was better, try not to listen to them, because here's what happens when you read the book before watching the movie. When you read a book before you watch the movie, you already, vision what happens in the book. Visually, that is. Because, when you read the book, you already have a preconceived notion as to what these characters are, what they look like, in your head at least, what the world looks like, and everything. You get to do it all in your head. And that's why books are successful in that medium. But then when you go watch the movie, you're watching it from someone else's perspective. And I feel like a lot of people just can't get that out of their heads. They want to see the movie that they already thought up in their heads. And I feel like that's why I think a lot of people who say, the books are better than the movies are way misguided. Because I'm not saying that the book was any better or worse, but it's that I do feel like people just have that version that they read and they want to see that on screen, even if it wouldn't translate well to the screen. Because guess what? There was a more accurate version to The Shining than this film. It was called The Shining miniseries. Well, it was called Stephen King's The Shining, but it was a miniseries. And it sucks. It might read well on page, but in the visual medium that is film, or in this case a miniseries, it doesn't work. A lot of the things that probably were scary in the book come off as so cheesy and stupid in this version. And I feel like The Shining is a book that you just have to adapt in a very radically different way. Because on its own, you have to look at this on its own merits. The Shining is a brilliantly told story. In this film, at least, you see a slow progression of Jack's character. Now, of course, you can still see that, Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Torrance, is probably still not even all the way up there. But the way this hotel works, at least in my mind and some other people's minds, is that it basically reveals who you truly are. And if you don't know what Shining is, don't worry, because one of the best scenes in the entire film is this guy named Dick Halloran, and he's talking to Danny Torrance, the little kid, and he just explains to Danny what Shining is. And it's so fascinating. You learn a lot about this weird Shining thing, and it is exposition, but it's one of the best examples of exposition. It's done so brilliantly in this film. Now let me talk about the performances. Everyone delivers A+ performances. Like, Jack Nicholson, holy god, this guy is amazing. He's intimidating when you want him to be intimidating, but really, when you look at him, he kind of comes off as a character from a sitcom, like, honey, I'm home. It's just, he delivers things like a sitcom, like a comedy, and for me, it kind of makes him come off as more unhinged and more crazy, because he's just murdering people, or at least trying to murder people, and is just doing all these horrific things with just a smile on his face and just acting so gleefully, quoting TV shows and just acting really bizarrely. And like I said, I feel like that makes him come across more unhinged and more crazy. Now, funny enough, I actually did a review of this movie before, but I took it down because of my outdated thoughts on Shelley Duvall's performance. Basically, I thought she would either underact or overact. But then, watching the film again and again, I realized, no, actually, this makes sense. Because the underacting, or so I thought it was really her just trying to communicate to her son at his level. Like, oh, hey there, Danny. Like, trying to be a little bit more, like I said, down to earth with him. Trying to get down to his level and talk in a way where he could probably understand. Like how we always do with kids. And with, her quote-unquote overacting, again, it kind of makes sense because for the longest time she dealt with, Jack's alcohol abuse, and now since he's just trying to kill her now, it's all just coming out. Like, she's just letting it all out and just so stressed out about everything. So yeah, upon further thoughts and further viewings, I actually do think Shelley Duvall was magnificent in this film. And of course, Danny Lloyd, I think that's the kid's name, who played Danny in this one. Like, he's great. He is great in this movie and gives one of the best child performances ever. And Dick Halloran, or Scatman Crothers, playing Dick Halloran, he's a delight. I love this guy. I wish this guy had more movie roles, and it's just so sad that, he died. And the one thing I love about this film is it gives that feeling of claustrophobia. And it gives you the feeling of claustrophobia even though the hotel is huge. Like, for example, the scene where, Jack is typing on his typewriter, it feels claustrophobic, but yet at the same time, the entire room is huge and you can hear the echoes. It is a very open area. But this film is so good at making you feel uneasy that it really does work. It really does make you feel claustrophobic, even though you're in an area where that's literally the opposite case. And of course, the cinematography is nothing short of incredible. Like, some of these shots I could only dream of. I can only dream of, like, just being a fly on the wall and watching, Stanley Kubrick and his director of photography shooting this film hundreds of times, apparently, considering how many takes Stanley Kubrick had to do for this. I'm telling you, The Shining, at least for me anyways, is the greatest horror film ever. It is intense, it's hilarious at times, but for the right reasons. The acting is incredible, the writing is magnificent, one of the best screenplays ever written, some of the best direction ever, even though, oddly enough, Stanley Kubrick was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Director, and Shelley Duvall was nominated for a Razzie for Worst Actress. I don't understand that. The Shining is a masterpiece of horror, and even though it's not quite scary, it's just fascinating. I love seeing this world, these characters. I just love seeing how weird it gets, and right up to the last shot. When you think back on the film, like when you think back on what was said in the film, it really does come across really creepily. And so yeah, no shock, I'm giving The Shining a 10 out of 10. Well, that concludes Hannahween month. And so, yeah, what is your favorite horror movie? Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a like, share the video so we can get the channel circulated. Don't forget to support my Patreon on my Patreon page, or if you can't do that, then consider supporting me through my PayPal donation button in the description below. And if you want to see more, click this.